Leaders from the U.S., Japan, and South Korea are set to meet at Camp David in the U.S. for their first ever trilateral summit. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio are on their way to the U.S. state of Maryland for talks that will focus on security. The leaders plan to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden and will focus on establishing joint military exercises. They're also expected to discuss establishing an emergency hotline. The cooperation between the three countries comes amid growing security threats from China and North Korea. For more on this, our reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Riley Walters, an analyst from the Hudson Institute based in Washington, D.C.
From my understanding, this is the first dedicated trilateral meeting between the U.S., Japan, and South Korea. How significant is that?
What's really significant about this is it is purely the United States, Japan, and South Korea in the room on this one. And the big issues for them, North Korea has been and will continue to be traditionally the number one security concern for South Korea and Japan. But there is probably going to be a good amount of dialogue on China, on what it means to not just deter North Korean aggression, but the growing belligerence of Beijing in the Indo-Pacific, and what greater role that the three of us can do together.
Going forward, how big of a factor are these security threats?
I mean, the Japanese, since last year in their national security strategy, have highlighted how the security environment of the Indo-Pacific is probably the gravest it's ever been since World War II, which is pretty significant. And the Yoon administration, President Moon himself, even before coming into office, has talked about the threat that China presents to the region. Of course, North Korea, again, is their number one issue.
Aside from the summit, there's also plans to create a joint hotline to communicate in the event of emergencies. And there's also plans to establish trilateral exercises that will happen every year. How significant is that?
I think the military exercises in particular will be worth investing in. It's great that they can really lock these in now so that this momentum can continue into the next administration. The hotline is great as well, but as we've seen with the Chinese, sometimes people don't always pick up their hotlines. So it is important. South Korean officials and Japanese officials will talk, but I think the exercises really help solidify a step beyond that. It helps integrate our forces much better in the event that there ever is a contingency. The hotline is really great, though, for sharing current information and making sure that there isn't any miscommunication.
That was Riley Walters, a security analyst with the Hudson Institute based in Washington, D.C.